The night the Roman Empire tipped into chaos, it was not a general or a senator who killed the emperor, but his own training partner, a simple wrestler named Narcissus. How did a palace athlete manage to strangle Commodus and trigger one of Rome's worst crises? At the end of the 2nd century, when a shadow falls over the Roman world without yet being named, the empire still holds, vast, compact, girded with stones, camps, and rivers. The frontiers stand like ramparts of destiny. To the north, the Danube rolls its gray waters against the palisades of the limes. There, until recently, the Marcomanni and other peoples had tested the patience of the legions. The fires of the Marcomannic Wars are not quite extinguished. They smolder beneath the ashes of peace. For the empire, born of Trajan's conquests and then tamed, polished, and disciplined by Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, appears intact. The provinces obey. The roads run from one end of the known world to the other, carrying grain, wine, gold, orders, and rumors. In the camps, the standards still shine. The gods seem to keep their word. At the center, Rome breathes like a heavy heart. It is the world city, the axis around which seas and mountains turn. The Senate meets there, draped in purple and resentment. It speaks in the name of the dead republic. It judges. It deliberates. But the real thunder no longer comes from the Curia. It comes from the imperial palace, from the Praetorian Guard posted only a few steps away from these men of words. There, in this tense proximity, the fragile balance is played out between the old aristocracy and the new living god that is the emperor. Marcus Aurelius, a philosopher under arms, is nothing more than a memory of rain and mud on the Danubian frontier. In March 180, in Pannonia, near Vindobona or Sirmium, the voices disagree. He dies, surrounded by legionaries, his gaze turned toward a sky without answer. At his death, his only surviving son, Lucius Aurelius Commodus, alone takes the purple. The empire, still solid in appearance, is about to change its face. Commodus was born on a summer day, August 31st, 161, at Lanuvium in Latium. He came into the world not far from Rome, but already under the shadow of the capital. Son of Marcus Aurelius and Faustina the Younger, he was born into gold and purple. His first cries mingled with the restrained acclamations of courtiers. Destiny seized him from the cradle. Very early, his father held him up as a pledge of continuity. In 166, the child was proclaimed Caesar. Barely an adolescent, he already bore a title forged for the heirs of the rulers of the world. In 177, Marcus Aurelius took a step that even the gods regarded with gravity. He associated his son with the supreme power. Commodus became Augustus, co-emperor. The young prince officially shared the empire with the man who had spent his life meditating on virtue and death. 2 Augusti, 2 generations, 1 throne. But the day Marcus Aurelius breathed his last on the Danube front, he left his son without tutor or restraint. In 180, Commodus ruled alone. No more stern gaze upon him. No more paternal hand to turn him away from his whims. The empire, which had known princes adopted for their merit and not for their blood, found itself delivered, for the first time in a long while, to the brutal logic of direct heredity. The voices that speak to us of him are those of senators and Greek or Latin historians. Cassius Dio, a contemporary of those iron years. Herodian, later but attentive. The authors of the Historia Augusta, whose accounts waver between truth and fable. All look at Commodus through the eyes of a wounded aristocracy. They show him thirsting for games, fascinated by blood spilled to entertain the people, loving the sand of the arena more than the dust of the archives. As the years pass, these witnesses insist. The emperor turns away from the affairs of government. He leaves the pen and the seal to freedmen, favorites, mistresses, and officers of the guard. He himself seeks other trophies. He contemplates himself in the guise of Hercules, club in hand, lion skin draped over his shoulders, on statues raised in temples, on coins circulating to the farthest reaches of the empire. He no longer wants only to rule. He wants to embody a hero. The Senate sees this. At first it accepts it in silence, then with bitterness. Between Commodus and the Roman elites, a chasm opens, slowly, then all at once. Cassius Dio, who sits on the benches of the Curia, tells the story with clenched jaws. Trials for treason multiply. Men are accused, condemned. The crimina majestatis fall like stones. Each sentence cuts off yet another branch from the senatorial tree. The property of the condemned slides toward the imperial fisc, into the coffers of Commodus's intimates. Villas change masters. Estates pass to favorites. Senatorial gold feeds the power that hates it. Executions, exiles, and confiscations trace a new geography of fear. In the marble corridors, voices are lowered. People watch over their words as over a fragile treasure. Beyond the dead and the private ruins, Commodus indulges in another kind of provocation. He embalms himself in grandiloquent titles. Inscriptions swell with his name. His proclaimed triumphs fill line after line of stone. He glorifies himself like a god, stretches his laurels, blurs the boundary between honor and excess. But above all, he treads the sand of the arenas, not as a spectator, but as an actor. He descends into the Colosseum before the gathered crowds, helmeted, armed, the figure of a gladiator. He fights beasts, he kills them. He lays low opponents chosen to fall at the appointed moment. In the eyes of the people, it is a spectacle. In the eyes of the senators, it is a sacrilege. An emperor does not mingle with the men of the arena. He must be above, not beside them. Each combat digs the fracture between the imperial court and the old nobility a little deeper. At the center of this system, another power keeps watch: the Praetorian Guard. An elite corps paid to protect the emperor, stationed in the heart of Rome, they are the swords that surround the throne. Their chiefs, the Praetorian prefects, hold in their hands the lives of those whom everyone fears. Under Commodus, these prefects become major players. Tigidius Perennis, first, reigns as an iron minister until his fall around 185 to 186. He is accused of conspiracy. His power, judged too great, appears threatening even in the shadow of the purple. He falls brutally, as fall all those who have come too close to the imperial sun. After him, a freedman takes over, Marcus Aurelius Cleander. He was not born into the nobility. He comes from the imperial household staff. But the emperor hands him the keys. For a time, Cleander concentrates boundless power. Offices, honors, everything seems to be sold under his hand. His fortune swells. His name spreads through Rome like a murmur of resentment. Then comes the grain crisis. Wheat is scarce. Anger rises. In 190, the crowd demands accountability. A riot breaks out. The wind turns. Cleander, who had seemed invincible, dies in turn, the victim of a tumult in which empty bellies dictate politics. His end, as brutal as his rise, marks a time of instability at the top. Around Commodus, faces change. Favorites, de facto ministers, prefects, all can be struck down at any moment. Freedmen rise, palace eunuchs whisper, intimate servants know the master's secrets. Cassius Dio and Herodian describe a world in which the imperial household encroaches on the sphere once reserved for senators. Power slips, elusive, through corridors and chambers, far from the benches of the curia. In this palace where loyalty is a fragile mask, poison and the knife already lurk long before the end. Around 182, the threat emerges from the very blood of the Antonines. Lucilla, sister of Commodus, widow of Lucius Verus, can no longer bear being only the shadow of a throne she deems badly occupied. A plan is woven. Strike the emperor at the theater, where the crowd and the games could conceal the hand of the conspirators. Cassius Dio tells the story. The attempt fails. The hand trembles, the act is revealed, or the gods deflect the blow. Whatever the case, Commodus survives. The response is relentless. The conspirators are arrested, executed. Lucilla is exiled, then put to death. The imperial family itself is no longer a rampart. It becomes a field of suspicion. Other plots, other purges follow, sometimes barely sketched in the sources, but enough to saturate the air with mistrust. After this first attempt, security around the emperor tightens. Access is controlled. Around Commodus, circles of protection pile up like invisible ramparts. The more fear grows, the more he barricades himself in. The final years transform this fear into drift. Commodus no longer wants only to rule Rome. He wants to recreate it. He dreams of himself as founder. The sources report that he plans to rename the city, no longer Roma, but Colonia Commodiana, a new Rome stamped with his name. He renames months, institutions. The empire must speak his language, inscribe his face even into the calendar of time. While the scribes adjust these words, he returns to the arena. The Flavian amphitheater, the Colosseum, becomes his stage. He faces wild animals, carefully prepared. Lions, panthers, fierce beasts fall beneath his arrows or his weapons. The combats are arranged so that the outcome is never in doubt. The crowds acclaim him. Cassius Dio's accounts detail this frenzy of orchestrated blood. But beneath these acclamations, another judgment takes shape. In the texts left by ancient authors, the image of Commodus hardens. They call him cruel, quick to execute, fond of bloody spectacles. They denounce the arbitrariness of his appointments, the frivolity of his dismissals. They see him move away from the frontiers, the camps, the military reports. The princeps, traditionally commander-in-chief, becomes a palace athlete, distant from the legions that guard the Rhine and the Danube. Little by little, the emperor grows isolated. His interlocutors are no longer governors or generals, but gladiators, athletes, servants. A small circle of vigorous bodies and submissive gazes surrounds him. In this confined space, bound together by exercises, banquets, and games, vulnerability increases. For the more the emperor cuts himself off from the great men, the more the hand of fate prepares to emerge from his own apartments. Narcissus, or Narcissus, appears in the accounts as an athlete, a professional wrestler, a man of the palestra. He is neither senator, nor general, nor prefect. He holds no command rank. His power is not that of words, but that of muscles. His life unfolds amid the smell of oil and sand, the cracking of joints, the dull thud of falling bodies. Cassius Dio and Herodian present him as attached to the court of Commodus. He does not merely wrestle for the crowd, he also trains the emperor, sharing with him the intimacy of physical exercise. In those moments, he approaches the very body of the master of the world. He seizes him, throws him down, holds him. He knows his breath, his fatigue, his strengths and weaknesses. He is at once partner and servant, close and inferior, indispensable and replaceable. This physical closeness is a key. It opens a door that neither senators nor prefects nor generals can pass through. In the bedchamber or the exercise room, there is no heavy protocol, no long processions. There is the naked presence of the emperor and of those who train with him. There, in this confined space where power sometimes forgets that it is vulnerable, Narcissus stands, silent, observing, not yet knowing that his name will remain tied to the end of a reign. For it is precisely this closeness, this banal and daily right of access, that one day will serve as a weapon. When the gods tighten the knot of fate around Commodus, they choose as executioner not a great champion of politics, but a palace wrestler, well versed in the art of strangling an opponent. The years go by. The fall of Cleander in 190 further fractures the circle of the powerful. A grain crisis plunges Rome into the fury of the crowd, and the freedman, who believed he held power, falls under the blows of anger and necessity. After this turmoil, in 192, the palace is reshaped. Other names rise, almost silently. There is Marcia, concubine of Commodus, influential favorite, woman of the shadows, mentioned by Cassius Dio and Herodian. She knows the recesses of the emperor's heart. She knows his habits, his weaknesses. There is Latus, Quintus Aemilius Latus, Praetorian prefect, master of the guard, a man whose gesture can bend a cohort. There is Eclectus, steward of the palace, chamberlain, keeper of the inner doors, of the household, of the keys and the calendars. Around these three figures, power is concentrated. Each holds a share of the prince's fate: the bed, the spears, the doors. They act in a climate where political and social tension is rising. Commodus is increasingly at odds with the Senate. In the corridors, the great men fear for their lives, but the most threatened are not always those one might think. For sometimes, the emperor's hand turns against those closest to him. The end of December approaches. Rome prepares for the festivities. January 1st, 193, is to mark the beginning of a new year, a new consulate. Commodus decides that he himself will be consul. But not in the traditional costume, not in the austere toga of the magistrates. Cassius Dio relates, "The emperor wishes to appear on the morning of the first day, not in the Senate, but in the amphitheater, dressed as a gladiator. He wants to inaugurate his consulate with a fight in the arena." The news spreads like a gasp. For the people, perhaps, it would be an unheard-of spectacle. For the Senate, it is an humiliation. The consulship, ancient magistracy, symbol of Roman dignity, is mingled with the cries of the crowd, with blood, with betting. Between the nobles and the emperor, it is more than a disagreement. It is a sacrilege. The sources report that Commodus, in his fury or delirium, also envisages imposing on the senators violence or humiliations during these ceremonies. The details change from one account to another, but the essential remains. A threat hangs over them. The elites fear becoming the humiliated extras in a bloody staging. Each wonders whether that January 1st will open on a new year or on a bloodbath. One day, after his bath, Commodus leaves behind him what no ruler should ever forget: a list. On a tablet, a document, some support that time has erased, he has had written, or wrote himself, the names of those he wants put to death. Anger, perhaps, guided his hand. Perhaps he also thinks of purifying his entourage, of cutting away around him the branches that seem dangerous. What happens next? Cassius Dio recounts with the precision of a witness. Marcia, one way or another, gets hold of the tablet carelessly left behind. She reads it. She finds her name on it. She also reads that of Latus, that of Eclectus. The letters do not waver. The order is clear. They must die. Perhaps at the next ceremonies, perhaps even earlier. The time for supplications is over. It is now about survival. She then warns Latus and Eclectus. Together, they take the measure of the danger. The net is tightening around them. Each breath can be the last. They know what Commodus's anger is worth. They have seen exiles, executions, confiscations. They know that the list will not remain a dead letter. So a decision takes shape. They must strike before being struck. They must kill the emperor before the emperor kills them. It is no longer only a matter of ambition, nor even only of politics. It is a matter of bare survival, without adornment, sharp as a blade. They immediately dismiss the idea of a public assassination. The Praetorian Guard keeps watch, armed around Commodus, especially during ceremonies. A strike in the amphitheater or in the Senate would be suicidal. They must strike from the shadows, in the private sphere, where power lays itself bare. Marcia immediately understands her role. As concubine, she can offer the prince drinks, food. Her gestures arouse no suspicion. A sweet word, a cup of wine, a dish, and death can change cups. She knows that the hands that will still caress can also deliver poison. Latus, for his part, holds the keys to force. As prefect of the Praetorian Guard, he commands the soldiers charged with protecting the emperor. If he looks away, if he orders a slight repositioning, if he keeps silent at the right moment, the guard will not move, or not fast enough. He can turn these protectors into powerless witnesses. Eclectus, finally, controls access. He is the one who knows who enters the imperial apartments, who passes through them, who leaves. He can open a way out, bring in a man who would otherwise have no reason to be there. He knows the corridors, the hidden doors, the servants' routines. So their thoughts converge on a name: Narcissus, a wrestler, a man who can be brought near the emperor without anyone being surprised. An athlete Commodus knows, with whom he has already crossed swords in the game of wrestling. Used to mastering resistant bodies, to stifling resistance in his arms. A man for whom strangling is a technique, not a sacrilege. They decide to bring him into the plot. For Narcissus, they do not offer an office, a title. They offer him a task: kill the emperor. Nothing is known of his words, of his hesitations, if he hesitated at all. The sources record only the bare fact: he accepts. The chain is formed. The poison, the guard, the doors, the hand. Time now works against them as much as against their target. The end of the year is approaching. the calends of January advance like the step of war. Marcia takes it upon herself to poison him. She has the drink prepared, or prepares it herself, slipping in the chosen poison. She then offers it to the emperor, as so many times before. He takes the cup, trusting. Why would he be wary? In front of him, he does not see an enemy hand, but the familiar face that has been with him in his hours of pleasure and rest. He drinks. The poison goes down his throat, crossing a barrier no guard could have protected. After that, the accounts diverge in the details, but the main line remains. Death does not come at once. Commodus does not suddenly collapse, struck down on the marble of the bath hall. The poison weakens him. He feels unwell, perhaps dizzy, sick. He is helped, or is led, or drags himself toward his room to rest. For the conspirators, this is a chilling realization. The poison does not guarantee a quick death. It may weaken, but not finish the job. It leaves a margin of uncertainty, a dangerous delay. For if the emperor gets back up, if he guesses the hand that struck him, the revenge will be without measure. They therefore need a second blow, more certain, more brutal. They entrust Narcissus with the ultimate mission: to finish off the emperor in his bedroom. This is no longer a matter of subtlety, nor of distilled poison. It is a matter of brute force, of body against body. The athlete receives the order. Eclectus prepares the passage. He makes sure Narcissus can reach the imperial bedroom without being stopped. A door will open. A servant will turn his eyes away. A corridor will be empty at the chosen moment. Latus, for his part, keeps watch over the guard. Perhaps he orders a repositioning. Perhaps he gives instructions not to be alarmed if certain noises are heard. Perhaps, quite simply, he keeps his men in ignorance. Whatever the case, no major movement of the Praetorian Guard will come to thwart the decisive act. The space around the imperial bedchamber turns into a silent trap. We are now in the night of December 31, 192, on the threshold of January 1, 193. The palace on the Palatine, the emperor's residence, is half asleep. Some keep watch, others feast. The world holds its breath without knowing it. In one chamber, the master of the empire is lying down, weakened by poison and fatigue. Around him, curtains and paneling, perfumes and shadows. He passes through the doors, guided by the shadow of Eclectus. The torches burn, flickering. The guards are there, but their eyes slide past. Perhaps they recognize Narcissus. Perhaps they think he comes for some usual reason, for an exercise, to entertain an insomniac emperor. He does not look like an assassin. He looks like a wrestler. The sources are sparing with details about the precise gestures. They do not tell the words, if words there were. They do not tell of the exchanged glances. They do not say whether Commodus recognizes in the half-light the silhouette of his wrestler. They do not say whether he calls out, begs, roars, or remains silent. They say only the essential. Narcissus strangles him. By morning, or in the hours that follow, the palace is no longer the same. Marcia, Latus, Eclectus look upon a world where the emperor no longer exists. They wanted to save their lives. They have changed the course of history. Now another struggle begins. The struggle for power, for order, for the official version of events. They must announce the death of Commodus. They must prevent the guard, surprised or enraged, from turning against them. They must offer the Senate and the army an acceptable successor, a reassuring face in the night that has just opened. If they fail, it will not only be the end of an emperor, but the conflagration of the empire. In the corridors, footsteps are already quickening. Messengers depart. Words are being prepared. A way is sought to explain this breathless body. Natural death? Accident? The formula matters little, so long as it buys time. But behind these screens, one fact remains. An emperor has been killed by one of his own, in his own palace.